my purpose. She told me that in the Arctic regions, as they call some places, a long way north, where the Great Bear lies all across the heavens, and no sun is up for whole months at a time, and yet where people will go exploring out of pure contradiction, and for the sake of novelty, and love of being frozen, that here they always had such winters as we were having now. It never ceased to freeze, she said, and it never ceased to snow, except when it was too cold, and then all the air was choked with glittering spikes, and a man's skin might come off of him before he could ask the reason. Nevertheless, the people there, although the snow was 50 feet deep, and all their breath fell behind them frozen, like a log of wood dropped from their shoulders, yet they managed to get along, and make the time of the year to each other by a little cleverness. For seeing how the snow was spread lightly over everything, covering up the hills and valleys and the foreskin of the sea, they contrived a way to crown it, and to glide like a flake along, through the sparkle of the whiteness, and the wreaths of the wind's tossings, and the ups and downs of cold. Any man might get along with a boat on either foot, to prevent his sinking. She told me how these boats were made, very strong and very light, of ribs with skin across them, 5 feet long and 1 foot wide, and turned up at each end, even as a canoe is. But she did not tell me, nor did I give it a moment's thought myself, how hard it was to walk upon them without early practice. Then she told me another thing equally useful to me, although I would not let her see how much I thought about it. And this concerned the use of sledges, and their power of gliding, and the lightness of their following, all of which I could see at once, through knowledge of our own farm sleds, which we employ in lieu of wheels, used in flatter districts. When I had heard all this from her, a mere chit of a girl as she was, unfit to make a snowball even, or to fry snow pancakes, I looked down on her with amazement, and began to wish a little that I had given more time to books. But God shapes all our fitness, and gives each man his meaning, even as he guides the wavering lines of snow descending. Our Eliza was meant for books, our dear Annie for loving and cooking, John reared for sheep and wrestling, and the thought of Lorna and mother to love all 3 of us, and to make the best of her children. And now, if I must tell the truth, as at every page I try to do, though God knows it is hard enough, I have felt through all this weather, through my life was Lorna's, something of a satisfaction in doing duty to my kindest and best of mothers, and to none but her. For, if you come to think of it, a man's young love is very pleasant, very sweet and tickling, and takes him through the core of heart, without his knowing how or why. Then he dwells upon it sideways, without people looking, and builds up all sorts of fancies, growing hot with working so at his own imaginations. So his love is a crystal goddess, set upon an obelisk, and whoever will not bow the knee, yet without glancing at her, the lover makes it a sacred right either to kick or to stick him. I am not speaking of me and Lorna, but of common people. Then, if you come to think of it again, or I will not say lo, for no one can behold it, only feel, but remember what a real mother is, ever loving, ever soft, ever turning sin to goodness, vices into virtues, blind to all 9/10 of wrong, through a telescope beholding, though herself so nigh to them, faintest decimal of promise, even in her vilest child, ready to thank God again, as when her babe was born to her, leaping, as at kingdom come, at a wandering syllable of gospel for her lost one. All this our mother was to us, and even more than all of this, and hence I felt a pride and joy in doing my sacred duty towards her, now that the weather compelled me. And she was as grateful and delighted as if she had no more claim upon me than a stranger's sheep might have. Yet from time to time I groaned within myself and by myself, at thinking of my sad debarment from the sight of Lorna, and of all that might have happened to her, now she had no protection. Therefore I fell to at once upon that hint from Lizzie, and being used to thatching work, in the making of traps, and so on, before very long I built myself a pair of strong and light snow shoes, framed with ash, and ribbed with withy, with half tanned calf skin stretched across, an inner sole to support my feet. At first I could not walk at all, but flounder about most piteously, catching one shoe in the other, and both of them in the snowdrifts, to the great amusement of the girls, who were come to look at me. But after a while I grew more expert, discovering what my errors were, and altering the inclination of the shoes themselves, according to a print which Lizzie found in a book of adventures. And this made such a difference, that I crossed the farmyard and came back again, though turning was the worst thing of all, without so much as falling once, or getting my staff entangled. But oh, the aching of my ankles, when I went to bed that night! I was forced to help myself upstairs with a couple of mop sticks, and I rubbed the joints with neat's foot oil, which comforted them greatly. And likely though I would have abandoned any further trial, but for Lizzie's ridicule and pretended sympathy, asking if the strong John Ridd would have old Betty to lean upon. Therefore I set to again, with a fixed resolve not to notice pain or stiffness, but to warm them out of me. And sure enough, before dark that day, I could get along pretty freely, especially improving every time, after leaving off and resting. The astonishment of poor John Fry, Bill Dadds, and Jim Slocum, when they saw me coming down the hill upon them, in the twilight, where they were clearing the furzy rick, and trustling it for cattle, was more than I can tell you, because they did not let me see it, but ran away with one accord, and floundered into a snowdrift. They believed, and so did every one else, especially when I grew able to glide along pretty rapidly, that I had stolen Mother Meldrum's sleeves, on which she was said to fly over the foreland at midnight every Saturday. Upon the following day I held some counsel with my mother, not liking to go without her permission, yet scarcely daring to ask for it. But here she disappointed me, on the right side of disappointment, saying that she had seen my pining, which she never could have done, because I had been too hard at work, and rather than watch me grieving so, for somebody or other, who now was all in all to me, I might go upon my course, and God's protection go with me. At this I was amazed, because it was not at all like mother, and knowing how well I had behaved, ever since the time of our snowing up, I was a little moved to tell her that she could not understand me. However, my sense of duty kept me, and my knowledge of the catechism